Just want to talk briefly. I say briefly, I don't know. Just want to talk, the last video I put out, uh, talking about what we lost to the 60s, and kind of focused on our relationships in that piece. And if you haven't listened to it, I'd say go back and, take a listen. This might be a little bit longer because I'm going to talk about it from a economic standpoint. You see, one of the things I really hate doing. Well, I don't hate it, but I hate it. And as I talk throughout this, you understand why. Is I hate to continue to read, study, and learn. Because in doing so, I continue to really understand how my life, well, I guess all of our lives are nothing but a series of well constructed lies. And Second Thessalonians 2, I believe, verses 10 and 11 says they refuse to love the truth. And so he sends them a strong delusion so they can believe what is false. And that's what we've been doing since the Civil Rights Act was signed. We've been believing everything that's false, thinking it was the truth. And then it gets even worse when I study from a biblical perspective. And see, this type of information hurts. It's one of the reasons I love, as I said, and hate to study at the same time. I love the awareness, yet I hate what the awareness reveals sometimes. And when I present information, it makes people uncomfortable because we've been lied to for so long. It makes it harder for me to talk to people because many people in society prefer to live with the comfortable lies, and their spirit can't accept something contrary to what most of us were taught from birth. And see, over in Deuteronomy 28:68, it says, "No man would buy us." And for years, I never had any type of pastor explain that. I'm like, you know, why would a man want to buy us? And but after study, what that actually mean is, um, it doesn't mean we were gonna be for sale, because 2068 is the last verse in that chapter. What that means is no man is ever going to redeem us from our station around this world. Yahuwah is going to do it, the man you call God, in his timing. And that's, for a lot of us, that's hard to accept because we look at every other culture around this world and we see them outpacing us in so many avenues. And what what I've had to come to realize is, yeah, we have to live in this world. The Bible's very clear, but we're not of this world. And it's been real difficult for me to really understand that what's on the other side of this life, eternity, is better than this short period of life we have on this earth, which is, they say on average in the United States, in your 70s, but, you take out uh, crime and all of that stuff, and life expectancy goes up substantially in this country. But let's just roughly go with 100 years. Eternity is much longer than 100 years. You got a lot of things going on in this country right now and around the world right now. And these people, yeah, just like Satan, just like Lucifer, they know God. But the problem is they don't fear God. They not worried about the consequences in eternity. Whereas we should be worried about the consequences in eternity and not worried about this life. Yeah, we have to live. I'm not saying we shouldn't live, but eternity is much longer than the things they think they're getting away with right now, if you understand. So, white America, in spite of all this, white America keeps propping up blacks to speak and work on our behalf. And I just saw this morning that Jesse Jackson passed. And I'll just leave that there. But white people still treat us as if they are our God. And for many people in Black America, this actually rings true. Now, figure that out. Why does white America choose leaders for us? They choose leaders for us because the ones they choose can easily be controlled. Why do we need to be led? You know, if we have to be led, we don't spend time thinking and acting on our own behalf. Why can we never speak and act of our own volition? Because if we start speaking and acting on our own, other blacks may start to think and act for themselves as well. Talk to a black person, and most of them regurgitate the same talking points. Trump is racist. Uh, Crockett giving them hell up in Congress. Republicans are the slave party. Democrats and Republicans switch sides. It took me a while to learn these things, that all politics is theater. I haven't voted for a major party candidate on a presidential election since 2004. Um, I voted for Alan Keyes in 2008, and I ain't voted for a president since. I don't even participate in elections no more because it's theater. All of it's theater. And I mean, everybody else can do what they want to do, but my wife has never participated. And she didn't get indoctrinated early, even though everybody in her family was doing it. My wife learned how to think for herself a long time ago, and she's never participated, not once. Your black church, it's theater. It's for show. Your civil rights movement, it was all theater. How can I say this? What has improved in the black community with all of these people supposedly working on our behalf since 1909 when the NAACP started right through today? Black people spent the entire decade of the 60s getting their heads bashed, getting sprayed with industrial strength water hoses, bitten by police dogs, spit on, thrown in jail, and killed just to beg white America to take their money in their establishments and to allow us to live next door to them. We suffered at the hands of white people so we could give white people our economic power. Then instead of teaching our youth to dress nice just because, they started teaching us to dress well in order to impress white people so we could get hired in their companies. We taught our youth to get the college degrees to beg white people to work for them. We moved entirely away from black business ownership. What have we built since the Civil Rights Act was signed? What have we built since the Voting Rights Act was signed a year later? Integration was the greatest destroyer of self-sufficiency that ever happened to Black America. How do we go from just want equal treatment to being included and accepted by demons? And I'm not saying all of them are demons, just like all of us ain't good. But demons are running the system. Yahuwah told us as a nation, the 12 tribes of Israel, to be set apart. Set apart doesn't mean to isolate yourselves because we all live among each other. We aren't supposed to pick up the behaviors of other people. Set apart means we serve Yahuwah and Yahuwah only. Set apart means we maintain his word. Set apart means we don't make and follow idols. Set apart means we don't eat the foods he told us not to eat. Set apart means we don't engage in sexual practices that are abnormal. The mouth and the butt are not sex organs. Our civil rights leaders told us to assimilate. We had our own schools, although not as well funded, but we wanted to attend their schools. And our black teachers they were actually concerned about our educational well-being back then. I remember having a conversation with some teachers years ago. And I just like the job. It's pretty secure. And yeah, that's pretty much the status of education now. But education ain't too secure no more. Nothing is. We had our own black universities, but we wanted to be accepted in theirs. And so many of them funded the opening of some of your HBCUs because they didn't want to sit next to us. Now, and Carter G. Woodson has a book, The Negro in Our History. And he talks about how whites controlled Negro education. And in spite of the destruction, the violence, and eminent domain, we still had thriving black neighborhoods and communities. But that wasn't good enough for us. We wanted to live around people who didn't like us. We wanted to live around people who didn't respect us and despised us and hated us. We lived among each other and respected each other, not because of profession, but because we all suffered from oppression. When we didn't have that many black politicians, we collectively fought against the system. Once we got hordes of black politicians, we got politically lazy and expected blacks looking to enrich themselves financially at our expense and who wanted to be in the presence of the white power structure to be our voice. We had lots of blacks who owned businesses and we lost it to become employed by the power structure. How did we get sold on the idea of selling the most productive years of our lives right back to whites? They had it during slavery, and then once civil rights passed, we started selling it right back to them voluntarily. Well, you've heard me mention W.E.B. Du Bois, and many of you know who he is. He was the first one who sold us on that idea of selling our productive years back to white people. You know, isn't it amazing that every black person who gets the limelight for Black America has been educated at some point in their college career at a white university? Du Bois, Harvard; William Monroe Trotter, Harvard; Martin Luther King, Boston; Bayard Rustin, City College of New York; Roy Wilkins, University of Minnesota; Jasmine Crockett, Rhodes College and U of H. See, Malcolm X said since the Civil War's freedom, the black man has gone down so many fruitless paths. His leaders have largely failed him. Um, See, the boy was born free, and then white paid for his Ivy League schooling to see if blacks could learn in their system. And see, William Monroe Trotter came from a well-to-do family. Now, am I saying white universities are bad? Not at all. I attended one, but I attended mine out of financial necessity. I didn't have no money to leave city, and U of H had an excellent engineering program. With the local HBCU, Texas Southern, didn't. I wanted to go to Prairie View, and also at the same time, University of Houston had a football team, decent football team, and Prairie View had uh, suspended their football program during the time I graduated high school. So, you know, like I said, even if they had a football team, I didn't have no money to go over there, and when they finally brought the football team back, there were no scholarships available. But anyway, I went to the University of Houston, and but like I said, I'm not saying white universities are bad. What I am saying is we never have blacks in the spotlight or leadership roles in our communities who didn't attend one. The system chooses our leaders for us. What I've learned over my life is that the loudest people are always the most vulnerable, and the ones they're also the ones more likely to compromise. Since blacks still had thriving businesses without the NAACP and their objective to destroy black entrepreneurship, whites needed a new tool. That's when you got Martin Luther King. See, the precedent set by Martin Luther King to downplay the importance of economic independence as he pushed for integration in the white institution is fundamental to the ongoing decline of the black masses. I know it's not comfortable. Some of us still want to hold on to them. I mean, I understand, but the truth hurts. See, the civil rights movement supposedly started with the Montgomery Bus Boycott in 1915. And see, at this time, Du Bois' use for this was no longer needed. He was up in age and hadn't accomplished what the NAACP and the power structure wanted. So they needed something new. And so he moved to Ghana in 1961 when the civil rights movement really started to gain momentum. And see, Du Bois hadn't delivered what the system wanted, and that was a dependent black race. See, that's why he and other blacks um, handpicked by the NAACP, were chosen to destroy everything Booker T. Washington and other self-sufficient blacks had built. And see, when Washington died, they went full steam ahead to build black dependency on the system, again, like it was in the days of slavery. However, business ownership had gained so much momentum. It was too much momentum. Go back and look at those Negro encyclopedias back then and see how black business ownership was blowing up and exploding and thriving in spite of Booker T. Washington, because they had a mentality. And see, isn't it amazing that the NAACP was a catalyst behind the Montgomery Bus Boycott with Rosa Parks? Why didn't the bus boycott start with Claudette Colvin, who was a teenage member of the NAACP? Well, they said she was pregnant. You can find this out yourself. And it was true. However, there were two issues that really stopped them from going forward with using Claudette Colvin as the picture of the fight. Apparently, she was pregnant by a Jewish man, teenager. And they didn't want that exposed because the NAACP has always been a Jewish organization. And secondly, Claudette Colvin said this herself, and rest in peace to her, she just died last month. Um, Claudette Colvin said this herself. She was considered too dark-skinned to represent Black America, and Rosa Parks had the right look. Claudette Colvin said that herself. See, why didn't the NAACP step in when Mary Louise Smith Ware refused to give up her seat earlier that year? Why didn't they step up when Army veteran Sarah Keyes refused and was arrested in 1952? Why didn't they step up when Aurelia Browder was arrested in the same year? Why didn't they step up when 77-year-old Susan McDonald was arrested, depending on a cane to walk? Why didn't anyone step up when Janetta Reese got arrested? And see, with the exception of Sarah Keyes, um, you know, all those other women went to trial together, except Rosa Parks. Now, all of that happened in the same year. So why did Rosa Parks go to trial with the other women? Miss Reese, Janetta Reese, withdrew from the trial after her husband was threatened with violence and economic retaliation. Why did no one come to the defense of Irene Morgan in 1944 when she refused to move from the white section of the bus? Why didn't anyone defend Viola White in 1944? Now, get this. You know, Miss White attempted to appeal her charges, and the courts refused. Guess what happened? The local police retaliated, and one of the officers kidnapped her 16-year-old daughter, taking her to a cemetery and sexually assaulted her. And the 16-year-old memorized his license plate and reported him. And a civil rights attorney, E.D. Nixon, asked the judge to sign a warrant, and the judge did. However, the judge told the police chief, who in turn told A.A. Inger, which was the police officer, so he could escape and avoid prosecution. Where was the NAACP when all of these other women were treated this way? See, it's about timing. And what do I mean by that? See, in this system, we can only move when the system tells us to move. When does the system tell us to move? When it's expedient for the system. Why do you think the March on Washington happened when it did? Because JFK had to give approval first. So, in light of the Montgomery boycott, we lost focus on everything else. The civil rights crew even got upset with black business owners who didn't shut down their businesses to march. What kind of sense did that make? Negroes who didn't even work, never had jobs, wanted working men to stop their businesses and march with them. King and Rustin didn't have no business. King and Rustin didn't have no job to offer nobody. What employment did King have? What employment did Rustin have? Not one of your civil rights activists, leaders, or spokesmen knew what business ownership entailed because they were leeches. I know it's tough. I know it's tough. Somebody had to take care of them financially while they marched and boycotted. And guess who did it? Black business owners. They stayed in black-owned hotels. They ate at black-owned restaurants. They were groomed at black barber and beauty salons. And a lot of these things were done free of charge by the people these leaders were condemning. What kind of foolishness is that? We stopped riding the bus, but we still had to go to work for the white-owned companies. None of them, King and Rustin and Wilkins and all them, never told black people don't report to their white bosses. See, this period saw a massive decline in the pursuit of black entrepreneurship and black business ownership. And then when you add in that feminist movement around the same time, we can see why we have gone backwards. See, we focus on civil rights instead of civil rights. See, we focus on bringing up the black family. At the same time, we redirected our focus away from economic empowerment. I know it's a tough pill to swallow. Almost every black organization and movement were created and controlled by the Revelation 2:9 and John 8:44 people. Yet your government and Christian pastors tell you they are God's chosen. A couple of weeks ago, my wife and I were watching church service of the last church we attended, and we ain't been there in 8 years, a little bit over 8 years. And be honest with you, I don't plan on ever stepping foot back in a church service on a Sunday, because the Sunday ain't the Sabbath. It ain't the Lord's Day. Sunday ain't the Lord's Day. Sunday is Sunday, the worship of the sun. But I grew up on Sunday. My wife grew up in Catholic, so they went to church on Saturday. But my wife and I will never set foot in another Sunday service, church service. Trust me on that one. And based on what a lot of these dudes teaching, do what you want to do. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling what me and my wife not doing. But your government Christian pastor tell you them Revelation 2:9 and John 8:44 people are God's chosen. But a couple of weeks ago, we were watching a service at that church we attended. Because, we still watch, that. I watch a lot of people, teach on the Bible. And the pastor was teaching from the book of Daniel. This dude, this dude literally said Jews do a lot of terrible things. But since they are God's chosen, he is going to stand with them because God isn't through with them. Well, I agree with him. But I agree from a different perspective because I read the same Bible he reads from. The Bible says only one group of people can never be saved. The people of Edom. Read Obadiah 1:18, Ezekiel 25, Joel 3:19, and Amos 1. See, we've moved from the position of doing for self and each other to begging others and politicians to do for us. We move from a position of empowerment to a position of weakness. Yet we think we've made progress. Here's the tip. No one's coming to save us. Not the U.S. government, not white America, not black politicians, not black civil rights leaders, and definitely not black pastors. Out of every group I just mentioned, how many of them are talking about economic empowerment or business ownership? Government, white, politicians, pastors have been telling us to wait since the Civil Rights Act was signed. Black pastors and civil rights leaders keep us focused on grievances. Nobody is talking about empowering ourselves. Since the Civil Rights Act passed 62 years ago, we've been bamboozled. Every issue we have has required government intervention. That's because we keep listening to black folks who have done nothing to help us. Black politicians, government is the answer. Congressional Black Caucus, government is the answer. Civil rights leaders, past and present, government is the answer. Black pastors, government is the answer. Not one of them has ever said, let's look to Yahuwah. Not one of them has ever said, let's look to ourselves and cure and fix what ails us. Not one of them have ever said, let's work with each other. Let's support each other. You know why? Each one of them I mentioned gets enriched by the system at our expense. Their job is to give us the illusion of help. Now, if you don't believe me, ask yourself, what has any of them ever done to improve our plight? And I'm going to close with this quote from Asada Shakur. And she said, nobody in the world, nobody in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who were oppressing them. I'll talk to you later.